Have you ever noticed that something is wrong and wondered why it seems like nobody's doing anything about it? We're in the midst of a climate crisis. Make no mistake, our children's future is uncertain. I know we can all be part of making change happen, though, no matter what we do, as long as we find something to care about. We just need to take that first step and allow the rest to grow. Each one of us is unique. We all have our own talents, our own passions, and our own tipping points. And I want you to know that you too can find your voice and that you have the power to make the world a better place. I'm Sophie Miller, artist, creative activist, and collaborator. I'm passionate about the ocean and raising awareness of the climate crisis. I love to do things, I love to make things, and I really love to make things happen. Creating emotive, joyous, powerful on-street theatrics, often in volatile situations on the front line of a protest. My work has gained international media attention and even been described by the head of the City of London Police as the most powerful form of protest he'd ever seen. After working with Extinction Rebellion since its birth, I co-founded Ocean Rebellion in 2020 with its primary aim of raising awareness of the plight of the ocean. Before I tell you my story, I want to ask you a question. I want to ask you, what do you think stops people from taking action? And what stops you? Today, I hope to inspire you to know that you too are someone, and that you are someone who can make a difference. In 2015, the body of a child washed up on a beach in Turkey. Aylan Kurdi was just 5 years old and was trying to reach Kos in Greece with his family, fleeing the war in Syria. My children were around the same age as Aylan, and we'd popped into our local branch of Smiths for some stickers that they were collecting. In there, we were faced with a newsstand filled with pictures of his little body on the seashore. And my children were voracious new readers, and they read the headlines aloud. They asked me when they read them, Mum, how did that happen? Why didn't somebody stop it? Why didn't somebody save him? It was a really difficult question to be asked by your children, but I chose in that moment to say to them that despite the apparent awfulness of what we were seeing and the words that they'd just read aloud, that there were things that we could do. Despite the government decisions that had led to that moment, there were still things that we could do to help the situation. And so after talking to my children and planning the different ideas of things that we could do, we decided to collect clothes to send out to Greece so that any child that was arriving by boat could be warm and dry and dressed. So we collected knickers, socks, jumpers, vests, coats, gloves, hats, boots, everything that a carer would need to dress a soaking cold child. People in our local community rallied round. They were keen to help and keen to do something. And within 6 weeks, we had a pallet ready to go. So we sent it out, and many children newly landed in a foreign country were warm, dry and dressed, luckier than little Aylan. Being a bit of an upstream thinker and knowing that many people didn't make it across the sea led me to consider how to make it safer for people who had to stay in Syria. They either couldn't leave or they didn't want to leave their homes. So I started working with other volunteers to raise funds to buy ambulances and send medical aid and ambulances out direct to Syria. We collected, over a year, we collected enough money to send out 3 ambulances and worked with our local hospital to collect out-of-date or near out-of-date medicines. And we sent them all out to Syria. Through this work, I learned that we're not alone, that we don't work as isolated individuals. We work best as a group, together, each one of us bringing our own unique gifts. We create a kind of patchwork quilt of action, the whole being so much greater than the sum of its parts. This kind of activism led me to explore my own unique gifts. I wasn't born an activist and I didn't train to be one. I trained as an artist, so I felt like I wanted to somehow combine it. And so I found myself dressed head to toe in red with a white face, embodying the blood of our planet. The Red Rebel Brigade was born in Extinction Rebellion's April 2018 uprising and was inspired by Butoh theatre and the Victorian tradition of mute mourners. So this is a very strange tradition. These were mourners that were hired by Victorian peoples in a repressed society to express their grief, because in Victorian times people were so repressed they couldn't actually even sob at funerals, so they paid people to do it for them. So this was quite a strange form of activism to find myself doing, especially as it involved an apparent lack of doing in the active sense of the word. With the Red Rebel Brigade, when we go out, we spend a lot of time tuning into the energy of the earth, and we have a loose plan for where we're going to go, but often in a demonstration situation, we don't know how things are going to unfold. So we don't know exactly what's going to happen. There's police, protesters. It's a highly volatile situation. And we can also feel called to be somewhere different in our hearts. There's so many variables and people are working to their own scripts. You just don't know what's going to happen. Another thing in the mix is that we are absolutely silent. We don't interact with other people. We inhabit another reality and we kind of enter another realm. And it really does feel that way. We sort of observe and witness. When we're tuned in, it's a bit like following a fine golden thread through whatever situation we're in. We have to be fluid and go with the flow. I've learned over this time of creative activism that the flow is always the right place to be. Although things may not be apparent at the time, if I am standing in my truth, then everything will be exactly right. Creative activism has taught me that there is no rehearsal, a lesson that's good for life in general, that every moment is for doing what I care about. When you do what you really care about, when you stand for love, something bigger happens, something magic enters in. And maybe you find yourself doing something a little unusual, like smuggling a costume into the British Museum and dressing head to toe in black and coming out of a toilet cubicle, which might seem like an unusual thing to do, but representing an oil slick doing this caused members of the board of the British Museum to feel uncomfortable enough to question their sponsorship, to question their collaboration with BP for the sponsorship of the arts. Sometimes activism is obvious. Sometimes it looks like the sensible thing to do to everyone else. But sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to follow your heart. I want to ask you, what do you love to do? What do you wish someone would change in the world? And what stopped you from doing it? And what if you did it anyway? It's easy to feel overwhelmed, and it's hard to know what to do. I spent years with my head in the sand, hoping someone would do something. Standing in our truth isn't easy. It quite possibly cost me my marriage. I've lost friends, and these days I'm rarely invited to parties, being the person who talks about climate change. But if we all stepped up to do that, that's something that we feel is important. And if we all brought our own unique weirdness to the world for good, I know that we would make the world a better place. I've learned a powerful lesson. I've learned to listen to my inner voice. So to give you one piece of advice today, one thing that you can do is to listen deeply to what calls to you, however random it may seem, and act upon it. You too are someone, and you will make the world a better place by being in it.